Sure, here is section 1 of the story script, written to be around 760 words, with tight pacing, emotionally charged language, and no unnecessary repetition, crafted for a faceless infidelity story video. My name is Lena. For the longest time, I thought my life was exactly what it was supposed to be: stable, structured, even enviable to some. I had a home that always smelled of cinnamon, a marriage that looked steady from the outside, and a stepson who was respectful and charming. But when you pull the curtain back, when you sit with the silence long enough, you start to hear the cracks forming in everything you once thought was solid. Mark, my husband, travels a lot for work. He's a high-level consultant, numbers, strategy, deals in hotel conference rooms. In the beginning, I admired him for his ambition. Over time, though, the space between us grew. At first it was subtle, missed calls, a rushed kiss, long days with short answers. Then it became normal. I'd wake up alone, eat dinner alone, go to sleep with a man whose body was there but mind was miles away. He still paid the bills, remembered birthdays, but the man I married had slowly become a roommate with a credit card. I tried to fix it. Planned surprise dinners, bought new laundry, even suggested therapy. He laughed off the idea, said I was overthinking. I'm just busy, he'd say, eyes glued to his laptop. I stopped trying when even my efforts felt like a burden to him. Months went by without real conversation, without a single meaningful touch. Loneliness isn't loud, it's quiet. It builds like dust on a shelf until suddenly, you're choking on it. Then Zane came home for the summer. 19, tall, confident. Mark's son from a previous relationship. He'd always been polite, a little reserved around me, but that summer something was different. He carried himself differently. He helped with groceries without being asked, complimented my cooking, asked how my day was, and not in the passing way people do, but like he actually wanted to know. I told myself it was harmless. I was flattered, sure, but it was just attention. Something I hadn't had in so long, I almost didn't know what to do with it. We talked more over coffee in the mornings. He'd sit at the kitchen island while I cooked, telling me about college, music, life. I noticed the way his eyes held mine when I spoke. The way he listened. I hadn't felt seen like that in years. One evening, I spent hours preparing dinner for Mark: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, his favorite wine. I lit candles. Wore a dress he once said made me look stunning. He called 10 minutes before he was supposed to arrive. Something came up, he said. Another client dinner. His voice was casual, like this was nothing. Like I hadn't been waiting all day to feel important to him. I sat at the table alone, staring at untouched food and flickering candlelight. Zane walked in. He didn't show, he asked gently. I nodded. He looked at me like he wanted to fix something he couldn't even name. You look really beautiful tonight, he said. I wanted to smile. Instead, I excused myself to the bathroom where I let the tears fall freely. The kind of tears that don't make noise but drain everything from you. Later that night, I was curled on the couch under a blanket, eyes swollen, mind racing. Zane knocked gently and sat down beside me. He didn't say much, just sat close, our shoulders barely touching. You deserve more, he whispered, almost like he didn't mean for me to hear it. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to. The next day, I met up with Nora, my best friend. I told her I was losing my grip, on my marriage, on myself. I didn't tell her about Zane, but I think she knew something wasn't right. You need clarity, Lena, she said. Not chaos. I nodded like I agreed, but clarity felt like a luxury. I was surviving on emotional breadcrumbs. I didn't need clarity. I needed connection. That night, I laid in bed beside Mark, who was finally home but still glued to his phone. I watched the screen light his face while he scrolled through work emails. I turned to face the wall and let my mind drift. I thought about how silence had become our language, how nothing between us hurt more than the things we no longer said, and for the first time, I felt afraid, because something in me was starting to crack. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted to stop it. Let me know when you're ready for section 2. Of course. Here's section 2, written tightly and directly, continuing the emotional build-up without repeating previous elements, and staying within the 760 word mark. Mark left again, early Thursday morning. Said he'd be gone for 3 days, but I didn't bother asking where. I barely looked up from my coffee. He kissed the top of my head like someone patting a dog and left without turning back. The silence afterward was heavier than usual. That afternoon it started raining. Steady, rhythmic, the kind that slows time. The power flickered once, then cut out for a few minutes. I lit candles, sat on the couch with a glass of wine. Zane came downstairs barefoot, holding his phone like it could control the storm. Wi-Fi's down too, he said with a crooked grin. I laughed, more out of nerves than humor. He sat down beside me, not too close but not far either. We talked, easy, unfiltered. He asked me about my life before Mark. No one ever asked me that anymore. I told him about art school, about how I used to paint before everything became about responsibilities. He told me about feeling abandoned by his mom and how he hated pretending to be okay. Something shifted. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. But it was intimate. Our pain, strangely aligned, filling the room like steam from a kettle. I poured him a glass of wine. He didn't ask. I didn't hesitate. He watched me in a way that felt intentional. Not objectifying, not juvenile. Just focused. You don't act like you're 38, he said softly. You feel younger. Alive. I didn't know how to respond, so I looked away. You don't act like someone who's loved properly, he added. That one hit. Wasn't long before the conversation slowed. I stood up to blow out a candle, and when I turned around, he was right there. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath. His eyes searched mine for permission, or maybe warning. I didn't speak. I didn't step back. His lips touched mine, tentative at first, like he was testing something fragile. I kissed him back. Just once. It lasted maybe 5 seconds. But it was enough to change everything. I broke away, breath catching in my throat. No, I whispered. We can't. He didn't push. He didn't even try to explain. He just nodded, eyes filled with something I couldn't name, shame, maybe. Or regret. Or longing. I went upstairs alone, heart hammering like I'd run a marathon. I locked my bedroom door for the first time in years. The next day was awkward. Tense. He avoided me, I avoided him. We walked around each other like ghosts. I wanted to erase it, pretend it never happened. But my mind kept returning to it, over and over, how it made me feel seen, touched, desired. And how I hated myself for needing that. By evening, I started to convince myself that it had been a weak moment. A lapse. We all make mistakes, right? I thought maybe I could return to normal, pick up the pieces quietly. I opened Mark's laptop to check a utility bill. His messages were still open. I didn't mean to look, I swear I didn't. But one line stood out. Dinner was amazing last night. Can't wait to see you again. I clicked. It was a woman named Elise. She wasn't work. She wasn't a colleague. She was someone he had clearly seen more than once. Dozens of messages, all flirtatious. One had a picture of a wine glass, captioned "Our spot." My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, not angry, just numb. So he had been doing the same thing. Maybe worse. All this time he'd been somewhere else emotionally. It wasn't just work. It was her. I wasn't the only one who had crossed a line. Somehow, that made me feel less guilty and more hollow at the same time. I closed the laptop slowly. Sat down in the same chair where I'd laughed with Zane just 24 hours earlier. This house had become a cage of secrets, and I couldn't tell where the bars began or ended anymore. I didn't know what was worse, what I had done, or how easy it had been for both of us to betray someone and keep breathing like nothing happened. I didn't see Zane that night. I stayed in my room. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just stared at the ceiling, waiting for the guilt to hit harder than it did. But it didn't. That scared me most of all. Let me know when you're ready for section 3. Of course. Here is section 3, the final act, with no repetition, clean pacing, sharp emotional tone, and approximately 760 words as requested. Mark got home the next morning. He walked in like nothing had changed. Briefcase down, jacket over the chair, casual kiss on the cheek. I didn't return it. I just said, "We need to talk." His expression didn't change. Maybe he knew. I told him I saw the messages. Elise. The dinners. The compliments. His jaw tensed. You went through my laptop, he asked. Not denial. Not guilt. Just defensiveness. You're not even trying to deny it? I asked. He sat down, sighed like I was being unreasonable. It wasn't serious. Just attention. I didn't cross any major line. I almost laughed. Major line? You were planning secret dinners while I waited home in a dress you haven't noticed in years. He didn't respond. I stared at him, at the man I thought I knew. And before I could stop myself, I said it. I did something too. His eyes met mine, this time with interest. What do you mean? He asked. I held his gaze. Something I didn't plan. Something that made me feel visible. He stood up suddenly. Who? He demanded. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence told him everything. He stared at me like I was someone he'd never met. For the first time, I think he actually saw me. Not the wife, not the background figure, but the woman who had finally stopped waiting. He didn't ask for details. He didn't yell. He just grabbed his keys and walked out. No bags. No goodbye. Just the click of the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, numb. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I felt nothing. No tears. No panic. Just stillness. An ending that had already happened long before today. Later that day, Zane knocked gently on my door. He looked like he hadn't slept. He knows, doesn't he? I nodded. He looked down. I think I should leave, he said. I didn't try to stop him. He was right. Whatever happened between us couldn't exist in this space anymore. It wasn't about running away, it was about stepping back from something that could never be repaired. Before he left, he hugged me. Tightly. No kiss. No promises. Just a long, quiet embrace. When he pulled away, his eyes looked glassy. You were the only person who ever looked at me like I mattered, he said. I didn't have the heart to say anything back. I watched him walk out the same door Mark had, only hours earlier. Both of them gone, and somehow the house felt lighter. Nora came by the next day. I told her everything. She didn't react the way I expected. No judgment. Just quiet understanding. It wasn't about the kiss, she said. It was about how long you've felt invisible. I nodded. I don't even know who I am anymore, I admitted. You're someone who was starving and mistook attention for air, she replied. It happens more than you think. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest. For once, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. Days passed. Then a week. I got no call from Mark. No apology. No confrontation. Just absence. It was almost cruel how easy it was for him to disappear. Zane sent one text, I'm okay. I hope you are too. I didn't reply. What would I say? That I missed him? That I wished things were different. Now, the house is quiet in a different way. Not cold, but empty. I find myself journaling again. Painting small things. Drinking coffee without waiting for anyone to ask how I slept. Sometimes I wonder who was really at fault. Mark, for abandoning me in plain sight? Me, for reaching towards something I had no right to touch? Zane, for stepping into shoes that didn't belong to him? There's no clean answer. People talk about betrayal like it's a sudden break, a sharp cut. But it's slower than that. It starts with silence. With missed moments. With the feeling of talking and not being heard. You start to fade, until someone sees you again, and suddenly, you're real. And once you've felt that again, it's almost impossible to go back to being invisible. I'm not proud of what I did. I won't justify it. But I also won't pretend it didn't wake me up. I look at myself differently now. Not better. Not worse. Just honest. I know what I'm capable of, good and bad. And I know this, you can love someone and still leave them. You can feel guilty and still not want to go back. Some stories don't end with forgiveness. They end with understanding, and sometimes, that's enough. Certainly. Here's section 4, continuing the narrative cleanly, without repeating previous details, and written with the same tight focus, emotional clarity, and around 760 words as requested. 3 weeks later, the divorce papers arrived. No message, no confrontation. Just his signature, already filled in. I stared at them for a long time, expecting to feel some kind of sting. But I didn't. If anything, I felt like I could finally breathe. It was so final, so quiet, and so overdue. I signed them that night. No ceremony, no hesitation. Just a pen stroke and the sound of release. There was no going back, and more importantly, no part of me wanted to. The next morning, I took off my wedding ring. It left a faint line on my finger, a mark of something that had once meant permanence. I placed it in a drawer, not out of bitterness, but because I didn't need the weight of symbols anymore. I'd lived too long under the illusion that appearances were the same as reality. I didn't tell anyone right away. I didn't post it. I didn't even call my parents. It was mine to hold, not something for the world to pick apart. I spent those days clearing out the house, clothes, old photos, souvenirs from trips that felt like someone else's life. Every drawer I entered felt like peeling off a layer of a version of myself that no longer fit. Then came the dreams. Not about Mark. About Zane. They weren't sexual. They weren't even romantic. They were simple, quiet moments. Laughing in the kitchen. Listening to records. The way his eyes softened when I talked about things no one else remembered. I'd wake up with this ache that had no name. Not longing. Not regret. Just a void where something real had briefly lived. He didn't text again. I didn't either. But his presence lingered like a scent in the room. I'd see something on TV or hear a song and think, he would have liked this. And then I'd feel foolish, like missing him was a kind of betrayal to my healing. But emotions don't follow rules. They don't care about what's appropriate. I started therapy. On the second session, my therapist asked, when was the last time you felt chosen? I couldn't answer. I think that was the moment I realized how long I'd been starving for emotional intimacy. Not sex. Not attention. Just someone seeing me fully, without needing me to shrink to fit their comfort. For years, I had convinced myself that being a good wife meant sacrificing without question. That loyalty meant endurance. I wore my silence like armor. But Zane shattered that. With one look, one sentence, one moment of truth. He didn't fix me. He just reminded me I existed. I don't excuse what happened. But I also won't shame myself endlessly for it. We are so quick to brand women in these stories. Reckless. Immoral. Homewrecker. But no one looks at the cracks that led her there. The erosion of affection. The years of invisibility. The ache that doesn't make noise until it's already torn you in half. I don't need Zane to come back. That story ended where it needed to. It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't right. But it was honest. And sometimes, the most forbidden things are the only ones that tell the truth. Nora asked me recently, if you could undo it, would you? I thought about that long and hard. Not because I missed the chaos, but because that one decision forced everything else to unravel, and in doing so, set me free. So no, I wouldn't undo it. Not because it was perfect. But because it exposed everything that wasn't. Now I live differently. I move slower. I say what I mean. I don't fill silences with forced smiles. I let people show me who they are, and I don't flinch when the truth comes out. Sometimes I sit on the porch with coffee and think about how easily life can fracture. One missed dinner. One look. One moment where you reach for something just to feel alive. But I also know now that breaking is sometimes the beginning. I don't know if I'll ever fall in love again. I don't need to. I've already done the harder thing. I found myself in the aftermath, and this time, I won't lose her again.